praise to Allah. There is no God but Allah. Allah is great.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to another episode of True Peace, the Secret of Life. You know, we've been looking at in this series about how we as Muslims can be better, how we can be the best that we can possibly be. Be all that you can be. It's a saying of one organization, but we won't mention who that is. They say, be the best you can be. But in Islam, we want to be a trustworthy society. We want to be a society that is raising the trust of the Muslim Ummah. We want to have people throughout the world saying, one group of people you can trust, no matter what. And that is the Muslim community. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be wonderful if the whole of society could say, you know what, one thing about those Muslims is they keep their promises. One thing about those Muslims is they are trustworthy. Their trustworthiness, their fairness in dealing with business, their performance to duties. Wouldn't it be awesome if we could raise the society of mankind and they would all look at us and say, these are the things that we know about Islam, that they do these things. But sadly to say, we're not like that at this point. A lot of us are getting there. Many societies are getting there. Muslim societies throughout the world are getting there. Some more than others. But unfortunately, there are those who haven't learned that lesson. And because of that, we find that there is a lowering of trust. When people start to see that, you know, people in some countries, there are more conflicts. There is a lack of motivation. There is poor performance. There is dissatisfaction. And when these things happen, you see the Muslim Ummah starts to slip down. So we want to bring Islam up. We want to bring a rising trust in the Muslim Ummah. And so today we are continuing with our series. The outline that we have been doing so far, we've looked at the belief system, what Islam holds to be true, what is the hope that we find in Islam. We've looked at the educational system that we have in Islam. We've looked at the belief system, or I should say the spiritual system in Islam. We've looked at how Islam deals with morality and how it deals with day-to-day issues. And now we're going to be looking at the fifth step, which is human responsibility. Maybe people are saying, well, what is human responsibility? Some people might call it human rights. I don't like the word human rights too much, because what is human rights really, if we actually come down to it? We don't have any rights. We actually have responsibilities. Humans have been given responsibilities. Responsibilities by Allah, responsibilities by government, responsibilities by the environment. We have responsibilities, not rights. So we are talking today about the pillars of Islam, the pillars of Muslim responsibility, about human responsibility in society and what these pillars are. The first pillar of human responsibility, of Islamic responsibility, is that of good moral conduct, and the outcome of this is faith. If we have good moral conduct, then we will have a good belief system. We will have good faith in what we do. If we perform our salah on time as good human beings, as good citizens of planet Earth, then we'll have an opportunity to see other people come closer to Allah, because it's something that we should do. So the pillars of human responsibility is faith, the second pillar is salah, the third pillar is zakat, and the fourth pillar is fasting. These pillars will make up a successful human responsible society. Because if we have faith, there will be good conduct in the way that we deal with one another. And of course, Hajj is also very, very important in this aspect as well. I'm not going to go into zakat, and I'm not going to go into fasting, because we've done that in so much depth in other programs already. But these are the basic pillars that make up good human responsibility in society, which also happen to be the pillars of Islam. What we need to understand that in having a good Muslim character means that we will have certain rights and responsibilities. If we are good Muslims, we have to have a good Islamic character. And there is, in Islam, the character of rights. And the character of rights, like we have the Charter of Human Rights written by the United Nations and other charters. In Islam, there is a charter that we live by. And this is the Charter of Rights in Islam. First, there is the rights of Allah, and then there is the rights of humans. Both of these rights are put together in the Islamic Charter of Life. So we have a very simple charter. If you go to the United Nations and you download the United Nations Charter for Human Rights, it's thousands and thousands of pages long, and it gets upgraded and changed every few months. But in Islam, it's a very, very simple charter. The charter consists of two aspects: rights of Allah and the rights of humans. And these are two important rights that we as Muslims follow. But there is a weakness often in humans. And this is why we as humans need to understand that we need to be dependable upon Allah. Humans, one of the greatest weaknesses is we like to argue. We like to debate. We like to get into confrontational issues all the time. And we like to argue. I mean, it's very simple for us to get into arguments. This is one of our weaknesses. If your mother tells you to do something, what do? You argue with her. If your husband tells you to do something, what do? You argue with him. If your wife tells you to do something, what do you do to her? You argue with her. It's a trait of humans. It can be sometimes a good thing, but generally it's a bad thing. So we just try not to be argumentative Muslims. When we become argumentative, it means that we somehow feel that our rights have been violated. And so what we do is we try to push our egos forward, and sometimes that can be a bad thing. Also, one of the weaknesses is that we as humans sometimes are disobedient. We don't want to listen. It can be civil disobedience. It can be religious disobedience. It can be disobedience towards our family members. It can be disobedience towards our government. It can be disobedience towards our communities. And so these are weaknesses that we as human beings have in our lives. One of the other weaknesses that we as human beings have is ignorance. Maybe we don't have enough education. Maybe we haven't learned enough. Maybe we don't have the desire to search, to find out more, to learn more. And it is our responsibility, it's our human responsibility to gain knowledge. Sometimes we become very cruel as human beings. One of our weaknesses is that we can lash out with people with the way we say things. We're very cruel with what we say. Maybe we're cruel with our hands. Maybe we hit our children. Maybe we hurt our animals. So cruelty can also be one of our weaknesses. We're also very weak-hearted. We are very easily influenced by whatever goes on around us because our hearts are weak. Sometimes we are too easily swayed. I remember a couple of years ago, a good few years ago now, I was watching a film, normal film, secular film, whatever it was, and the music in the film was making me have an emotional reaction. And I thought to myself, what would happen if we removed the music from the film? Would there still be that same reaction? And so what I did is I did a test, and I removed the music, and there wasn't that same reaction. So this proves how weak our heart is, that even something as simple as music can give us a totally different effect on what we are actually seeing. By the way, I no longer watch that nonsense. But if you are a person who is prone to weaknesses of the heart, you have to acknowledge that you're easily swayed. Sometimes we say that we can be gullible. Some humans are gullible. Often we can say that when we as human beings are often in a hurry, we want to move too quickly. One of my weaknesses is that I speak too fast. Many people say, you need to slow down. But the reason I speak so fast is I know that there is so much that I have to cover that often I become like a train that's trying to get to its destination too quickly. So I need to learn to slow down and speak slower so that people can actually hear and comprehend what I am saying. So these are some of the human weaknesses that we have. So there are two dimensions in the human nature that we are made up of. In fact, in human nature is probably made up of a lot more than just simply two dimensions. And the two dimensions that we spoke about is that one dimension is that we have responsibilities towards other human beings, and the other dimension is that we have responsibilities towards Allah. There are Allah's rights and there are human rights. The responsibility that a human has to himself and a responsibility that he has towards Allah. So if we look at this life that we are living in, this life has been given to us as a test. Allah has given this life to us to learn, to gain knowledge, to understand why we are put here. Fortunately, we have to take a short break. But when we get back from the break, we will continue, inshallah.
All praise to Allah.
Evil is approaching. A gap has appeared in the barrier of Ya'juj and Ma'juj, like this. This is part of a hadith that was spoken over 1400 years ago. And if it was near then, imagine how near it is now. My name is Muhammad Tim Humble, and in this series we explore the hadith of Sahih Muslim that speak of the trials and tribulations that are to come in the end of days.
Know and understand the signs of the final day to increase your taqwa and protect your iman in end of days. Next on Peace TV.
All praise to Allah.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back. We are dealing with issues of how you can be successful as a Muslim and how to find true meaning in life and how to find peace in your life. And now we are going to be moving on to another section where we're talking about human responsibility. You as a human have human responsibilities. And one of those responsibilities is to care for Allah. And you are to be a person who cares for those people around you, to love Allah as you would those people around you. One of your human responsibilities is to be a person of good charity, to give charity. How much and why do you give charity? This is part of your human responsibility and something that you need to understand as a Muslim, as a human being on planet Earth. You have rights, but there are rights that belong to Allah. Allah has given you what you have in life because He loves you. But it belongs to Allah. Those things that you have are not yours. You know, sometimes you'll hear children when they're fighting saying, mine, 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 and he won't share with his brothers or sisters. They become greedy. Some of us are like that. We have been given these things by Allah, but many times we become greedy and think that we are the owners of these things. They do not belong to us. The property rights of everything that we have belong to Allah. They are simply on loan. We are the custodians of the property and the belongings that we have. The wealth is the greatest test that has been given to mankind. That you own is the greatest test from Allah. You know, often I wonder if someone had to come knocking on your door of your home right now, and they said to you, give me your TV. How many of you would tell that person you must be crazy and chase them down the road? What would we do if Allah asked us to just give away our things? How often do we actually do that? I think if you want to know what my answer would be, you'd probably have to speak to my brother. He says I give away too much. But things are just things. They are just materials. They're not permanent. They don't mean anything. They're not going to give you satisfaction in life. I am the opposite of a hoarder. You know, a hoarder is a person that just keeps collecting stuff and collecting stuff and collecting things, and they have boxes and boxes of things all over their house. I'm sure you've seen those people. You go to their house and you can't even find their bedroom because it's just full of things that they've hoarded. Now, I'm the opposite of a hoarder. I'm a get-rid-of-er. I never keep anything very long. I have something for a short period of time and then I give it away as soon as I can. I don't want to be a person who is connected to an object, connected to things. Things are just things. They don't mean anything. You're not going to be able to take them with you when you die. In fact, you're not even going to be able to take them with you if Allah calls you somewhere. You're going to have to get rid of 90% of those things. If I had to relocate to another country, or Allah calls you to go do work in another place, what are you going to do with those things? So we must understand that we are custodians of that property, which means we need to look after the things that we are given, but not to hold on to those things that we are given. They're not yours. Give them on to other people. Some people, and this is probably going to be a debatable issue, but this is again purely what Areeb Islam says. So there's no grounds for what I'm about to say. Some people have so many books on their bookshelf that they never pass those books on. That wealth of knowledge could be given to someone else to learn. I personally believe that if you're not reading that book anymore, you're not using that book anymore, give it to somebody else. The best book that I was ever given, and trust me, it was like trying to get blood out of a stone, was a friend of mine in South Africa, Bilal Ismail, fantastic scholar, fantastic young man, a brilliant Muslim. But he had a book that I wanted, and it was almost impossible for me to get this book from him, and it was How to Perform Your Hajj. This book he can never get back now because it's one of the greatest books that I've read. And he wrote the book, by the way. And it's a fantastic book telling you step by step, stage by stage, what you must do on Hajj. You know, there are many books written on Hajj, many books written on how to perform your Umrah. But this book was gold. And no wonder he didn't want to give it away because the book is so good. Now that I've got it, I don't want to give it away. So please don't come and ask me for the book because I don't want to give it away. But there are books that sometimes sit on that shelf that are just collecting dust. There's wealth of knowledge that you're not going to use that book again. Please give it to somebody else. So we must be careful what we do with what is entrusted to us. We mustn't just have things that are just collecting dust. We must move that knowledge on, give that book to someone else. And it can also be with your wealth. You know, if you have a coffee table at home and you're no longer using it and it's sitting in the garage, get rid of it. Give it to somebody else. Don't be people that just hoard things. Give them away. Giving charity to people is one of the most important things in Islam. One of the most, not the most, but one of the most important things. We must be people who give to those in need. It is the way that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, all the prophets before him did with their communities and to those who were around him. We know from the stories of the Prophet Isa, peace be upon him, how he had so little, how he gave away all that he had. And so we need to look at the role models of the prophets and emulate them. I'm not saying that we all need to become like Mother Teresa and walk around with nothing and live in tents for the rest of our lives. There's nothing wrong with being wealthy. There's nothing wrong with having. If you have, alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed you with that. I personally don't have wealth. Other people I do know have wealth. And Allah has blessed them with that. But then they must use their wealth with wisdom. They must use their wealth in a good way. Charity is a human responsibility. It is a responsibility towards society. It is a favor that Allah has given to you to be able to bestow that blessing onto someone else, to be able to give that blessing onto someone else. It is a gift that Allah has given you to be able to give charity. There are many people that live their lives on the charity that you give. And with you stopping to give that charity, that whole livelihood of that person and the people that they're affecting can be affected. So it is important for us to understand how much, why, and when to give charity. This again is something that we need to have a look at in your own individual communities. Contact your local ummah, the local community that are responsibility for calculating zakat for you. Find out how and where to give your zakat, how much zakat to give, and the wealth that you have. They will calculate it all for you. Find out who is deserving in your community. Find out when to give that money. Some people give zakat at the wrong time. Some people never give zakat. So find out when, where, and how to give zakat from your local community. When we understand that as human beings, we need to give rights to other people, that other people have rights over us, we'll find that society will become a better society. we'll find that at the end of the year we are making more money because we're giving more money away. Not because it's some Ponzi scheme, but because it's the right thing to do. Like I've said before when we spoke about zakat, in the episode that we spoke about in zakat, we said that there is barakah in money when you give money away. The money that's left behind, you find that it goes further. $1 suddenly becomes like $100. Instead of $100 becoming like $1, and there's no barakah in it. So when you give away, you find that more money comes to you. I have found myself often when I think that, wow, I really can't afford to give money away, and I do, I found that money that's left, I'm able to do so much more with it, and I'm surprised and go, how is that possible? Because there's barakah in that. So when we look at the human responsibility of giving zakat, giving charity, looking after the poor, helping those Muslim organizations, helping the poor, these are things that make the whole Muslim Ummah better. So basically, if we look at it, we have to look at human responsibility in the following way. We need to have simple living. We need to simplify our lives. You know, instead of dumbing down ourselves in education, we need to increase our education and dumb ourselves down in buying stuff. So in society, we find that the world has gone upside down. We've got people putting as little attention onto education as possible and maximum attention on having goodies, having objects, having devices. We don't think we are cool enough if we don't have the latest laptop, the latest whatever it is, our phone, our pad, our whatever, and we don't have any education. So what we have is we buying and buying and buying and buying goodies, but we're not educating ourselves. So we need to change that. We need to simplify our lives. We need to simplify our living standards. We need to have a higher living standard when it comes to gaining knowledge about Islam, how we are going to be people who are going to gain more knowledge. So the bottom of the ladder would be we need to simplify our spending. The next step is that we need to increase our knowledge. We need to have a better standard of gaining education in our Islamic communities. And then we will see how society begins to change. Then we will see how our attitudes towards human living, human responsibility, and human rights changes. When we look at many countries in the world, we'll find that human responsibility has disappeared, and people are no longer interested in caring for those around them. We have, as human beings, have a responsibility to take the message of Islam to all four corners of the earth. You know, the Christians, they have what they call the Great Commission. Well, there's no such thing, but according to the interpretation of the Bible, it's called the Great Commission, where Jesus supposedly told his people to go out and spread the message to all four corners of the earth. In Islam, we've been given this responsibility, but we're leaving it to a select few. We think maybe it's the responsibility of Peace TV. Maybe it's the responsibility of the Islamic Research Foundation. Maybe it's the responsibility of Dr. Zakir Naik. Let me tell you something. It's your responsibility as a business owner. The person who is selling fruit on the side of the street, the person who is selling mobile phones, the person who is selling furniture, the person who is the teacher, the person who is cleaning your classroom, and you're all Muslims. It is your responsibility to spread the message of Islam. It is your human responsibility to take the message of Islam forward, not to wait for some organization or some well-known person to do it. Yes, they are already doing it, but you can reach more people than they can reach. That non-Muslim who comes into your shop doesn't know who Dr. Zakir Naik is, or who the Islamic Research Foundation is, or who Peace TV is, but they know you. You're the person that they're interacting with when they come to your shop. You're the person who can give them the message of Islam. You are the greatest da'i that person has ever met, because they don't know any other da'is. You're the best there is. So you have to gain education in Islam so that you're able to take the message of Islam to them. It is your human responsibility to save humans from the hellfire. It is your human responsibility to save people from living a life that is actually destroying them. It is your human responsibility to understand that this message was for you. So inshallah, we've run out of time again. Inshallah, next time we will continue with a little bit more in this series. We'll be looking at other aspects on how to be a successful Muslim, how to find peace in your life, how to find absolute meaning in your life. So that's all the time we have from me, Areeb Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Subhanallah walhamdulillah wa la ilaha illallah wallahu akbar wa la